Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Darren. So Darren, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. I'm a serial entrepreneur based in Los Angeles, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Issuance, which is a financial technology company. We have a SaaS platform that supports online capital raises. And in addition to that, I'm also an executive producer of a new original series called Going Public, which is a streaming series where we follow the stories of founders on their capital raising journeys. And for the first time, viewers can click to invest and buy shares in any company they want. And the next season is going to be streaming on Market Watch in early Q1 next year.
That's awesome. And that's really exciting. So what gave you the idea to start Issuance? Like, what problem did you want to solve when you started this company?
That's a great question. So, when companies raise capital online, the legacy model in which capital has been raised has been a marketplace or a listings platform where dozens or hundreds of companies are listing their deal on a third-party marketplace, and it looks like a Kickstarter homepage for shares. I've always thought that there had to be a better way for founders to run their own campaigns and really to own their investor data, all the leads and investors that converted a deal. And so that was kind of the impetus for my co-founder, Nick Allen, and I to start Issuance. And what we developed as an alternative to the marketplace model is an elegant white label solution where we license the software to you and you can run the financing on your own domain website. You control the campaign. Your deal is the only deal that your customers, fans, followers, or the market is going to see. And then when your customers invest, you own those investors exclusively. So it was an alternative to what we thought was a very flawed model.
Awesome. So can you just talk more about the importance of owning your own data when it comes to seeing, who the investors are or where they're coming from?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example without naming names. One of the biggest equity crowdfunding platforms happens to be a marketplace platform, which we have some issues with. Interestingly, and maybe unironically, the most successful campaign on that platform is that company itself, is the owner of the platform. Why is that? It's because that platform is exploiting the investors and leads of their hundreds and hundreds of clients for their own benefit, which creates an obvious conflict of interest. And we think that that's, borderline, that model needs to change. And so what they're doing is they've devised a clever mousetrap to raise capital for themselves. But the pitch is that they've got this big investor community and they're going to help you tap into that community. In reality, you're running the marketing, you're raising the capital for your own deal, you're turning your own customers into investors. And if you have 700 leads and 500 investors, all of those people, the leads and investors, are going to get marketed the securities of the platform, along with every other client that's running a deal there, past, present, and future. And that's just not right. So, let's say the average founder spent years to build a business. They put their life and soul into their company, and maybe they have 5,000, 10,000, maybe 100,000 paying customers. Any founder in their right mind would never want their investors in an equity crowdfunding campaign to be retargeted or remarketed to by some third-party platform that was just processing investments for them. So that's one of the big selling points for Issuance, and it's one of the reasons why we've got just tremendous momentum in this market. We're signing 4 to 5 new deals every week, and we think our model is really indicative of where the industry is headed.
Oh yeah, that's very exciting. So can you just talk more about the Issuance pricing structure? How do you typically charge your customers?
So we have 3 products. We have a product for Reg CF financings where a company can raise up to $5 million. We have a product for Reg A plus financings where a company can raise up to $75 million. And we have a third product for Reg D, 506B, and 506C offerings where you can raise an unlimited amount of capital from accredited investors. Our Reg CF pricing is a flat 6.5% of capital raised, and that's because the entity that we license the software from is a FINRA regulated funding portal. It's Jumpstart Micro doing business as Issuance Express. And so that entity, which is FINRA regulated, has the ability to charge a success fee. And then in the Reg CF and Reg D and Reg A plus model, it's a processing business. So we charge processing fees for credit card, ACH, and wire investments. Those fees will net out to maybe 5% of capital, not charged as a success fee, but as a combination of credit card processing, ACH, wire processing. And by the way, Dan, those fees are actually 30 to 50% less expensive than almost all of our competitors. So we've got this really incredible product which offers a very fast checkout, what we think is actually the fastest checkout for securities in the entire industry at a lower cost than others.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer for someone to use yours over your competition, but how do you really get the word? I'm sure, lots of it is really just people finding out that you exist as opposed to your competition, because obviously your competition has been there for many, many years. They've been in this industry. So how are you marketing your company?
Well, look, one of the interesting things about this industry to me is that the majority of my competitors are terrible marketers. They're not good brand marketers. They're not good self-promoters. And that happens to be an area where we excel in and I excel in personally. We do a lot of content marketing that drives a tremendous amount of inbound deal flow for issuance. We also have maybe 15 different affiliates or partners that we will work with on a partner basis that will do marketing, or they'll provide broker dealer services or transfer agent services. So we're constantly providing some kind of educational content through these partnerships and doing webinars, events. I'm planning to launch my own conference next year to build pipeline for the company. And we've now signed some really interesting strategic partnerships. In fact, we just signed a partnership with a massive talent agency, maybe one of the largest in the world, that we're going to be announcing later this month in October. And those kind of partnerships are what really separate issuance, truthfully, from others. We've just always thought differently about this industry than our competitors. We think differently about the types of deals we want to be in and how we can access those deals. The talent agency, for example, works with the world's biggest celebrities, influencers, and creators across music, TV, film, games, politics, sports. And all of these people, these celebrities and influencers, have millions and millions or tens of millions of followers on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. They're perfect fits to raise $5 million on Issuance Express, our Reg CF funding portal. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing. And that deal, for instance, it took 8 months to negotiate. Not an easy deal. My competitors they don't have the capacity to execute that kind of deal. They're operating at a very tactical deal by deal basis or level. And so the way we go to market is just a little bit smarter, a little bit sharper, and a little bit more strategic than others.
Yeah. So can you just talk more about closing this big deal? I mean, that's a very interesting thing, right? Closing a deal took you 8 months to do it. And as you said, right, it takes a certain amount of skill to be able to close a deal, obviously getting in front of people, but, a very big deal like that, like what did that look like for you to ensure that, you didn't let this deal fall through?
Thank you. Well, listen, I spent a decade selling Oracle software and services to Fortune 500 companies across Southern California and the United States before I started my first business. And in those deals, we're selling $1 million software package, a $2 million services package or implementation of the software. Those cycles, Dan, are 6, 9, 12-month sales cycles. They're probably some of the most complicated sales cycles in business. There's probably very few industries, maybe public sector deals might be a little bit longer. They are longer, maybe a bit more complicated. But these are deals that involve multiple decision makers. There's coaches, there's influencers, there's sponsors, and you've really got to be savvy at mapping out how decisions are made, why decisions are made. And so that decade of experience selling Oracle put me in a winning position to go out and negotiate the type of strategic partnership that Issuance just executed with one of the world's largest talent agencies, which, by the way, is a multi-billion-dollar business. I don't think there's been any other platform in this industry doing deals with multi-billion-dollar companies, but we are. And we kind of figured out right away where the opportunity was with this talent agency. We saw them looking at Issuance and seeing an opportunity for their client, or talent as they call them, to very easily raise capital online from their customers, fans, and followers. We figured out who the decision makers were, who the influencers were, what the legal concerns were. And of course, there's always legal and compliance concerns in deals like this. These billion-dollar companies, they're typically less interested in generating revenue. They're trying to figure out how do they protect the brand. And so we inherently understood that perspective from the outset. And then a lot of it was just the relationship. They were evaluating me as the founder and CEO of the company and saying, is this a guy we can put in a room with a Jay-Z or a Katy Perry and think he's going to represent our brand effectively? And the answer was yes. And then a lot of it's just patience, knowing that these deals take time and going through the motions and answering the questions and having the right answers to the questions. And then showing that we had a track record, which we do. We've processed hundreds of millions of dollars in investment. We've got a really slick system with an ultra fast checkout. So I would say it was a mix of just finding the right fit where there was value for both sides, understanding the decision-making process, and then going through the motions to get the deal across the finish line.
When it comes to the payment structure, are you currently taking any crypto payments, or have you looked into that for your platform?
Great question. Short answer is no. So I'm very anti-crypto, and for people that know me, I've got reasons for it. I was a victim of a SIM swapping hack. I lost $100,000 of crypto in 2018 as a speaker at the Consensus Conference in New York. I was on a panel with Joe Lubin. Good news is that my hackers were caught. They were tried. They were convicted and sentenced to jail. They're all in prison for 6 to 10 years. And God willing, I was able to get my money back plus some. But that experience really tainted my perspective of the crypto industry. I'm not a fan. I don't think it's the future. I think there's problems with Gary Gensler too, by the way. So it's not black and white. But from issuance perspective, the reality is that there's not a lot of people that are looking to buy securities using cryptocurrency. So we don't see it as kind of a common payment method. Therefore, we haven't built to solve for it.
Obviously, now in 2023, many people are looking for use cases for AI. So with Issuance, are you guys using AI? And if not, what are some of the use cases coming up where you could implement more of AI for the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was just talking about this on X, Twitter, with someone yesterday, Brianne Kimmel, who made a comment. And her comment was that as an investor, as a venture capitalist, she's been seeing a lot of AI decks that don't make any sense. And yet there's investors who probably don't know exactly what they're doing, wanting to invest or actually investing into these companies that don't make any sense so they can say they're invested in AI. There's no use for AI in the Issuance platform today. I'm not trying to find it. I'm not going to dream it up or create it. These things, Dan, aren't blanket solutions for businesses. Just because AI may change the face of the planet doesn't mean it has to have a role in my business or your business. In fact, it may not make any sense at all to have AI in any aspect in my business or your business. Now, for another company, it may be the secret sauce that's needed to turbocharge customer acquisition, delivery, revenue, EBITDA, capital raising. But for us, it's not. And so what I've found over the years now, having been in the hot seat as a founder of multiple companies for over a decade, is that a lot of these trends come and go. And I'm not saying that AI is going. I'm just saying that I've seen this before with crypto, NFTs, ICOs, and those are easy examples to pick on. Everybody had an NFT slide. Everybody had a crypto slide. We didn't. We could have ridden that wave, but it would have been a waste of time. So the reality is, our business is a processing business, and our product, the big selling point is speed of checkout. And there's really no application of AI that's going to improve the speed of checkout. Therefore, we're not pursuing AI as part of our tech stack at the moment.
How do you differentiate? So you mentioned, that's a very good point that these trends come and go, but how do you differentiate, for example? It's like, is this going to be a trend that is going to go away, or is this something that is really going to add value to my business now and going forward?
Look, I think every founder has to make these assessments for themselves at that moment in time. And again, there could be a play for NFTs in your business. There's not in my business. There could be a play for AI in your company. There's not for my company. I think it's important that founders pay attention to what's happening. But what I see too often is that founders change everything they're doing and they get over their skis and say, you know what, let's pivot this and make it an AI company, or let's say we're adding AI to do X, Y, and Z because it's trendy, it's timely. And what it really does is it's creating a market for grifting, where there's grifting happening on both sides of the table. On one side, you've got founders that are grifting, pretending that they have some AI solution, which they really don't. And certainly you have investors who are also grifting, saying, we're going to invest in AI companies. And then they use that pitch to go to their limited partners to fund their funds. We're not going to play that game. Now, again, I think that what we're seeing with Chat GPT, and sorry for this bum light in my office here. I'm in Beverly Hills. It looks like I'm somewhere else. I think that it's probably revolutionary. I've used these products. I've seen the power of AI, and it just doesn't have the right application for me. Maybe for a company I start tomorrow or next year, it's all AI. But in my business today, as a processor of hundreds of millions of dollars of capital, we haven't found a use case for it. I hope my competitors are chasing this and going down weird rabbit holes and getting totally distracted while we just eat their lunch, because that's been the trend for the past year.
100%. I mean, that's a good point, because I'm asking about AI specifically because we are in that space, and 100%. I've seen many founders that I've talked to that say that they're AI, or they're .ai, but there's really no AI being used in their business at all. So it's very important to make sure that people understand that. So in terms of raising capital, I think it's people. I think that many people don't understand what that process looks like. So when would you recommend for a founder to raise capital? And also, it's a very long process too. So it's it's also taking away from your time. So what does that look like in terms of just your experience being in this space and being in this industry?
Look, it's a great question, and I have some really sharp opinions about this. So let's start with this notion of pre-seed as a category of investment. Pre-seed meaning company maybe pre-product, pre-revenue, they've got an idea. And I know that that's not precisely what pre-seed will mean to every investor, but I think largely that's accurate as a category. I think that category probably shouldn't exist. Because it encourages founders to pitch ideas instead of to solve a problem and get paid for it and go demonstrate traction and revenue growth and user growth to an investor. Investors are investing in growth. Now, you don't technically have to have revenue to be a growing business. You could have 1 million users. Maybe you're giving your product for free. You don't have to have profits to be a growing business. But I think you should have traction. If you're going to raise capital, you need to have, at minimum, an MVP, a minimum viable product, a prototype, a product in market that you're actively selling. I don't care if you've got a lemonade stand, you have a SaaS fintech like we do, you're selling a wine subscription. I don't care what it is. You have to do the heavy lifting. The heavy lifting is the hardest. And the hardest thing to do is go from 0 to 1, as Peter Thiel says. It's really hard. In fact, it's almost impossible. And so, excuse me, I think it creates this kind of founders going down the wrong path, which is, well, hey, now there's pre-seed investors, and maybe Dan will invest in my idea, but it would be more valuable if that same founder would figure out how to be gritty, solve a problem, get paid for it, and then raise capital once they've done that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and that's something that we've struggled with too. It's we're always in this position where it's I tell my co-founder Qasim, we have to focus on serving our customers and building out our products and doing those things, eventually raising money. Because to your point, it's I've always said, I don't want to raise money until there are people that are actually buying from us and believe in our product. And even if we're charging a lot less than we could be charging, to your point, there's something that can to be said about actually having paying customers that are buying and believing in your products. So when it comes to raising money, right? I mean, it's you mentioned, obviously pre-seed is not good. But what is a good position? Because I think it's also there's this kind of middle ground, because you have people who we've interviewed on the show who are in the position where their idea, so to speak, is very costly, right? High level drones or technology that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what would you advise for those types of people? And also when is a good time to raise money?
Listen, you have to have some traction, and I'll give you an example. So in our production business, we produced the Going Public series. And we knew that to produce this show, 10 episodes, was going to be a multi-million-dollar endeavor. And we were never going to be able to produce the series with no capital. But we also knew we couldn't raise money without having some indication of traction. So what we did is we signed a distribution agreement for the series with Entrepreneur Media. They run the website entrepreneur.com, which has 20 million monthly unique visitors. That distribution deal took us about 16 months from the first call when they said, yes, we love this idea of a show like Shark Tank where viewers can invest. And then 16 months later, we actually signed the agreement. Once we had that agreement signed, we then went out and said, if you give us money, we can produce a show and we have a place for the show to stream. So we had something, we had an asset that differentiated us. Had we just gone out to those same investors, and by the way, we oversubscribed that round. We raised $4 million. We were targeting a $3 million seed round. We had $4 million of interest. We took it all, sold more equity than we planned to. We would not have been able to raise $500,000 if we said, this is just an idea. We don't have any distribution, but give us money and then we'll figure out, we'll go to market and try to get a deal done. We did the hardest work first, which was getting the distribution deal, which by the way, we had to sell that too, because the team at Entrepreneur said, so who are the companies? Well, we said, we don't have the companies yet. We need to have we have to have a place to stream the series so we can go to the market and say, if you sign with us and pay us these cash fees and stock fees, we now have a place to stream your story and promote it, help you raise capital. So, a lot of this is like a catch-22. That's why going from 0 to 1, it's so critical that founders find a way to solve that initial problem. Once you've solved that problem, for us, the traction was a distribution deal. For someone else, it might be revenue generation. It could be 500,000 in ARR. It could be a certain number of users. Then you've got proof that you are someone worth backing. You've done the hardest work of creating something from nothing. Maybe an investor should pay attention to you, because that's the kind of trait that any savvy investor is looking for in a founder. They're looking for grit. They're looking for resilience. They're looking for tenacity. Sure, they want a big market. Sure, they want proprietary technology and a brilliant co-founder. But if you don't have these core qualities of being able to demonstrate grit, tenacity, and resilience, you're not investable, period. And the only way you can demonstrate that is by doing the hardest work up front. Once you've done that, now you're in a position to put a deck together, 10 slides, problem, solution, team, traction, business model, market. Now you're in a position to go find a group of investors who have invested in similar businesses, put a list together, run a Reg CF, run a Reg D campaign, market the fact that you're raising capital, and prepare for hundreds of calls. Because, in this market, 2023 has just been absolutely brutal. It's been almost impossible for founders to raise capital, even serial founders, even founders who have exited companies, even founders that have millions in revenue. It's just so hard. So once you have that traction, the job's not done. You're just getting started. Now you've got to spend many, many months talking to dozens and dozens, probably hundreds of potential investors to find a handful that are willing to back you.
So what would you say is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew before you started your career?
Quit drinking, right? Counterintuitive. You weren't expecting me to say that. If you're a founder listening to this podcast and you want to increase your odds of success in any way possible, I challenge you to quit drinking for 90 days. Going sober was the single biggest success factor for me as a founder of multiple companies. I've raised millions of dollars for my businesses. We've generated millions in cash and stock fees. We're doing incredible things. And I credit most of my success to my decision to quit drinking. Why was that such a success factor? Because when you quit these habits, what you're doing is you're putting yourself in a position to succeed. It allowed me to put 100% of my time, energy, and focus into my companies. Not to say I was a raging alcoholic. I've never thought of myself as an alcoholic. Not that that matters, but that wasn't me. I was drinking 3 times a week. The worst thing that would happen to me is I'd have a hangover on a Saturday going to the farmer's market with the family. It's not a big deal. But still, that meant that I wasn't operating or thinking at my full ability, my full capacity, my full potential. Sobriety is a superpower. And running a business is fucking hard. In fact, it's almost impossible. 9 out of startups fail for dozens of reasons, right? There's a couple big ones. Most startups fail. Why not give yourself every opportunity to succeed, to be the outlier? I wish someone had told me that if I were to quit drinking, I would put myself in a position to succeed. So I'm 10 years into my sobriety and I haven't looked back. But I think this is an uncommon yet incredibly effective way for founders to beat the odds.
100%. I couldn't agree more. It's like I myself, when I was in college, like my other people, I used to drink a lot more, but now it's like almost never, because 100%, I always tell people, it's like the reason why I don't is because it's like every day there's something. And you want to be at 100%. You really want to be focused on whatever you're doing, especially when you're running a company. That there's so many things happening at once, and if you're not, 100%, if you're not sober or doing whatever drugs or anything, it's very hard to really focus and lock in on what you're doing. So, if somebody watching this wanted to reach out, do you mind sharing your website or social media handles? Just best way to get in contact?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love working with founders. You can contact me directly at Darren at Issuance, Darren at issuance.com, or at Darren Marble on Twitter. That's my platform of choice. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on this with you, Dan. So thank you.
Of course, yeah, and Darren, thank you so much for joining us. All right, bye. Thank you.
That was fun, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, likewise. Yeah, let's definitely keep in touch. And yeah, thanks again.